So let's just start because I know some people are ready to voice their opinion today. So we want to just get started. Curtis, if you don't mind, we're going to talk about and start our education, and then we're going to circle back and talk about how everybody's feeling with all of this.
Okay. Hey, everybody. My name is Curtis Johnson, and Sinta, thank you very much for this. I lived in Indonesia for over 2.5 years, and I was the senior manager for a place called Ad America, which is the U.S. Embassy's cultural center in Jakarta, Indonesia. And just for background, we did cultural events, maybe 15 a week. And so as an African-American male leading that space, which had never been done before, I injected a lot of African-American culture into the work that we did, which is how I met Sinta, her family, and her brother as well. And so one of the things I would always do is I'd try to come with some historical context to African-American culture, because I think the United States' greatest export is our pop culture. And our pop culture in the United States is based on African-American culture. The way African-American culture goes, so goes culture globally. And some historical context that I want to walk through, I'll start here in 1619. So before the United States was a country, in 1619, slavery began. And July 4th, 1776, it was the birth of the United States. In 1787, the U.S. Constitution was written. And there was a 3/5 clause in the Constitution for African Americans. And a lot of people misconstrue that 3/5 clause to say that an African American or an African American male at the time was counted as 3/5 of a person. But actually, it was due to representation. If you know anything about how political offices are districted, it depends on how many people that you have in your population. So as a compromise for the North and the South decided to say, all right, we will count African Americans as 3/5 of a person because they are essentially property, even though they are people. After that, you had the Civil War, which was 1861 through 1865. The end of legal slavery happened in 1862. The Emancipation Proclamation, as given by our 16th president, Abraham Lincoln, happened in 1863. Now remember, end of legal slavery was 1862. June 19th, 1865, slaves were actually freed. So essentially for 3 years, it was against the law to have slaves. However, they were not notified that they were free until 1865. Now, the number one proof of being a citizen in the United States and in most countries is the right to vote. Now, in 1965, African Americans did not have the right to vote, whether it be men or women. In 1868, slaves were generally considered citizens. So at least they were listed as citizens in the census, even though they had very few rights. Fast forward to the 1900s and 1920. In 1920, the suffragette movement guaranteed white women the right to vote. In 1944, after the end of the Second World War, there was something called the GI Bill. And what the GI Bill did was, after World War II, soldiers were able to come back home and they were given access to higher education for free, access to low interest loans for housing, and a bunch of just opportunities to get on their feet. And it essentially created the middle class in America. Now, any soldier was eligible for this, but as you can imagine, the soldiers that received those benefits tended to be white, and the soldiers who are African American tended to be denied or slow walked those benefits. So the economic divide continues to grow and increase. In 1965, my father was 15 years old, but in 1965, African Americans were guaranteed the right to vote. So from 619 to 1965, legally, African Americans in the United States were not citizens, and they were not given the legal protections of voting. That is 346 years of being an other. So that's essentially where we're coming from, and that's, you know, the starting point. And so you have all of these systematic racism aspects, you know, whether it be in housing and where you could live, whether it be in sports and the positions you could play, whether it be in pop culture and or media, and how we're portrayed not only locally but globally. And also in education, where segregation played a huge role in the disconnect on the ability and access to opportunities. And so where we are today is that there is another reckoning of, we are not treated in the same as white Americans, whether it be sentencing. You have two African Americans, Eric Garner and George Floyd, who essentially died because of cigarettes. Whereas you have Dylan Roof, who came into a church and worshiped with African Americans in South Carolina, shot up and killed 8 African Americans, and was taken under no duress, and I believe given fast food on his way to jail. That disconnect is essentially what, you know, folks are fighting for. And, you know, I think part of the issue and why the George Floyd situation is so such a catalyst is because everybody was home due to the pandemics. So everybody saw this globally, and everybody is outraged. But as we all know, this is not the first time. This is not even the 20th time. This has happened historically. And so hopefully that provides a little bit of background and context on the why and where we are.
Thank you, Curtis. That was great.
That was great.
Thank you.
Awesome. Please.
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Tiffany and Christopher Dawkins. We're newlyweds.
Yes.
Thanks to the storms, they helped us make our wedding happen. So if you guys are getting married anytime soon, just a little commercial. The storms literally helped us with getting food, photo booth, DJ. They hooked us up with their decorator, literally everything. But we're truly grateful for the storms, and thank you for facilitating all of this. And if anyone has questions, just let us know too, and feel free to message us.
One of us are wearing our rings.
Let me put on my wedding ring.
I guess
Literally went into quarantine right after our wedding.
Yeah.
Our wedding was February 29, and we went into quarantine March 13, right after March 13, in New York City. But we're so grateful to be with all of you today, and hope we can get, we can answer questions, and hope we can elevate and educate. It's really hard because I want to understand others too. The ones that, I feel I don't agree what they say, but I feel I need to understand their side. If they want us to understand, if we want them to understand us, we need to understand their side. And so, especially with the Indonesians, and we'll talk about that later, but it does go back to the whole colonized by European countries and things like that. So when we understand each other and where each other's coming from, there will definitely be less hate when we're trying to discuss things. So hopefully we can get through that today. Let me put on my wedding ring.
Put that ring, since he put it on you. Someone said congratulations in the chat to Chris and Tiff. It was awesome.
Thank you. Also, just a little background about me. I'm a fireman here in New York City. So I work and deal with the cops a lot, and so I have being a fireman, it's not a lot of Black firemen, very few of us. So I've been dealing with that work-wise for a while now, and just dealing with cops every day. So I have a different perspective in that aspect as well. But everything. So if you have any questions about that?
That's actually going to be a good one later for a later discussion. Definitely for this forum. That'll be something that'll be important, especially when it comes to maybe your experience and then the public's experience with dealing with cops, because as a African American male, there is it seems like there's a very intense but yet misconstrued interaction that we have with cops. And if you have a personal relationship with cops, you can't really see it from the same way that the public does until you have that interaction yourself. So that'll be good for discussion later.
That'll be super interesting. Nobody's supporting violence. I think people forget all that, but we can talk about that later. But Tiffany and Chris, can you just let us know where you're at right now? Like where your location?
Oh, we're in the Bronx.
Okay.
Bronx Zoo.
And there's another Maria and her husband also. Yes. Let me shout out to Maria real quick. We're still waiting for Karina, who is Maria. You want to unmute? I'll unmute you. Hold on, Maria.
Hi, everybody. Well, my name is Maria. This is Daniel.
I don't.
We live in the Bronx, and he works at the gym, and I am a stay-home mother.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being brave. I know it's early, y'all, and it's a Saturday.
Hello.
Thank you. Hold on. Admitting more people. Let me see where Corinne is. Corinne, if you are all here, can you unmute yourself and introduce yourself and your family? I don't hear Corinne.
Hello?
Hey, Sinta, this is Karina and Delle.
There we go. Hold on, let me spotlight you.
Oh gosh, no.
Well, no, just so then, like when I'm speaking, it doesn't go to our video.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So thank you for joining us. Can you just kind of introduce yourselves and then let us know where you're at? Not your exact address, just where you like. You can just say like wherever that location is.
Sure. So I'm Karina. This is my husband, Delle. Other people call him Shola, so it depends on who you heard about him from. But we live in Washington, D.C., and I moved here from Indonesia for college. So back in 2003, and I've stayed. So I'm here permanently now. That was never the plan, but here I am.
I'm Nigerian American. I was born and raised in Nigeria, but pretty much grew up my entire life here. I got my citizenship, my American citizenship, because my father accepted his citizenship before I turned 18. Commissioned into the United States Army, coming out of undergrad as a signal officer. Came out of did 2 tours in Iraq, came back to the Northern Virginia area, met Karina, and decided that this is going to be kind of the place where I settled in as far. So I resigned my commission coming out of the military, and I now work for a defense contractor in the Northern Virginia area.
He basically stole me from Indonesia. That's what it is.
Or she stole me from the United States Army. You know.
Oh, whatever.
That's good. So we have background with the fire department, the police department, and now the military, which is really good because that's extremely important, especially what's going on in DC and the use of military on the streets, which unless the mayor suggests that she would like the National Guard to step in, there really should not be any military presence on the streets. So with that being said, the fact that you actually have a background, you can speak to your opinion on that and what's going on.
Yeah.
Although I do like the Black Lives Matter street now in DC. I gotta go see that.
Oh yeah, no, that's true. I wonder how long that's gonna last. And in fact, we actually, two of our friends who live here, they're in the National Guard, so they've shared their opinions too, and like the conflict, the internal conflict they face with what's going on in terms of like, you know. So yeah, so that'd be interesting to talk about that too.
Yeah, so we got a place to crash, right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Protesters, you know, are welcome.
Right.
We live in Fairfax, Virginia, though, so we're kind of far.
To my camera, this is short people problem, short Indonesian problem. I gotta be close and controlling this. That's why Jamie's sitting a little bit far back.
Yeah,
when you have someone who's 6'2" and 4'11", I'm not ashamed, y'all. But that's why I'm like, you see me like closer like this. All right, so I saw that we have one of the Black community leaders from South Philly, Bernadette Wells. Bernadette, do you wanna come say hi? I never met you in person.
So, hi, I'm having a little difficulty with my camera on my laptop, so I will try and also log in on my phone. I am actually not, I'm an unofficial leader of the community. And why I say that, I don't have any title, but I was born and raised here in the 7th Street area of South Philly. I love my community with like passion. I mean, I am a product of the inner city community, and I am a proud representation of my community. And I am just here to be a voice for my community, in a sense of we do everything we possibly can to bring everyone together, so that everyone, now that it's a melting pot, to feel comfortable. And I just want to be a voice to say that I am here to work towards unity, so that we all feel comfortable. And if you need me, call on me. We do various events, providing services, providing support for every culture, for every ethnicity that's in our community. So when Lily shared with me this was happening, I just said, you know, just please allow me to join in for listening, and also to be available for any questions, or if we are going to do any type of work together, I would love to be a part of it.
Thank you. That means a lot to us, the Indonesian community, and maybe even the Asian American community. As you know, during the pandemic, the big one of the issues that happening in the community, that we were targeted just because we're Asians, right? We were targeted. Right. People were saying that we have virus. I know a few Indonesians in the community got targeted by some of the people from the Black community, but that's because there is this miseducation, and it's probably because the president is saying it, right?
Yes, yes.
So this is not the time for us to not be united. This is the time for us, all the POCs, all the people of color, to unite and educate each other. We can learn from the Black community. The Indonesians can learn from the Black community, and Black community can also learn from the Indonesian community. So I would love for us to get together and have this conversation, especially when it's safe to get together. But
yes,
we always do this virtual thing. So yes, please, I'll get your information maybe from Lily, and then maybe we can have this meaningful conversation even more. So thank you for being here and listening to us.
You're welcome.
I'm going to read one question because I think a lot of people have asked this. So I am going to offer this question to Curtis, Bernadette, but maybe even Chris, or maybe even Delle. So I'm going to read it real quick. This is from the chat, and then we're going to continue with other issues as far as African community. I'm 100% support equality and respect for Black people, but could someone help to explain why is looting happen that hurts small business, destroy other people's property, bring down the community? Who could be held responsible for all this that hurting people for the price of Black Lives Matters? Who wants to answer that? Everybody is saying.
Yeah,
I can answer that one too.
I'm sure a lot of people have commentary on this. I'll try to be succinct as far as answering this or addressing it. So, first of all, you have to realize that there's you have people who are protesting, you have people who are looting, you have people who are rioting. Those are more often than not three different groups of people. So, not to say that a protester isn't somebody who's protesting isn't looting, or somebody who's protesting is not rioting. However, right now, as far as what's going on in our country, we have over 40 million people unemployed right now. People who have been inside for close to 2 months on stay-at-home orders, and with the civil unrest that's going on, some people are going out there and protest. Some people are frustrated with other things and are seeing this as an opportunity, who do not care about, what happened to the incident that happened to George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, just all these things that have happened over time. So the number of people who didn't care previously still do not care now, but see this as an opportunity to go loot, to go riot. There's evidence of people showing up to places and putting bricks to basically take away from the true message of what's going on as far as the civil unrest and protest. On top of that, as far as some of the protesters who may be out there rioting, honestly, if we look at our society historically, just like that's what oppressed people do. You look at the Boston Tea Party, American history. They dressed up as Native Americans and threw tea into the ocean because of taxation. You look at, a few years back with the Arab Spring, all across the Middle East, people were oppressed and they started a riot. There's so many examples, or just so many times without history, where people who are oppressed, who don't hear their voices heard, that's what they result to, as far as protesting and in some cases rioting. And on top of that, again, with these rioters and looters, it's not one demographic of people. If you look at various news forums, I've seen, people stealing surfboards, breaking into stores and stealing surfboards. I've seen people looting the Louis Vuitton store in the mall in Portland. I've seen people in Chicago going through the Nike store, and it's all different social demographics, all different colors, you know what I mean? But again, I also want to say all different social demographics. There's definitely people who are wealthy or of means, and they're still out there looting and rioting, not protesting. Just like you have people who are of means of different socioeconomic demographics and races who are out there peacefully protesting. I'll leave it at that, and I'm sure people can have other points of views or other things they'd like to share on it.
Right. So there was a text just posted into the group for everybody, and that's one of the things that I definitely wanted to bring up. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "A riot is the language of the unheard." Protests are messy. No matter how people protest, it is never the way people want it to be. And that is on purpose, because this ish here must stop, right? So it's got to stop. And so somebody posted in the group that MLK said riots are the language of the unheard. And Martin Luther King said that, and that holds true. Protests don't happen, has never happened in the way people have wanted it to happen. And the people who want it to happen a certain way want the status quo. So, the folks who are on these streets are not interested in being polite and kind, because this being polite and kind didn't work. Colin Kaepernick essentially was polite and kind. he is still out of a job. When you look at property damage, one of my favorite quotes is, "You keep saying it's horrible that an innocent Black man was killed, but destroying property has to stop. Try saying it's horrible that property is being destroyed, but killing innocent Black men has to stop." That is a change in the dynamic. Like, where is the value system? And again, as far as the small businesses and these circumstances, they are a part of this bigger issue. When you look at the civil rights movement, what actually changed and moved the barometer was economic. They paralyzed the economy. The bus boycotts essentially paralyzed the economies in these southern cities. If you weren't on the bus, that means you were not going to work. That means you, as people in service, were not doing those services. Imagine in Jakarta, if every pembantu says, "Yeah, we ain't going to work today." If every nanny was like, "We're not going to work today," everything would stop, and people would be like, okay, we got to figure this out. You know, and you know, the gentleman was right. There are different aspects, and people have different agendas while out there, and that is purposefully trying to cloud the message. You have to ask yourself, where are bricks coming from in these major metropolitan cities? Like, if anybody who's walked the streets of the United States have never seen a bunch of bricks just sitting out on the street. So, you know, you have to ask, where are these coming from, and who, and what is the motivation, and how is this happening, before we say this property damage is detrimental. Somebody losing a life, I believe, is more detrimental than that.
All right, thank you. Can you all hear me?
Yes. So Putu explained that you are Indonesian. So people.
Yes, I am. Hello, everyone. Thank you all for being here. This is very informative and educational, and I'm learning a lot as per always. But for some context, I am Balinese American. My family immigrated here in the early 90s as music professors in university, and I'm also pursuing my studies in social justice, in indigeneity, and ethnomusicology, musical studies. Anyway, so these perspectives on rioting, looting, protesting, yes, as you've mentioned, it is very interesting to hear that these are inherently complex situations, right? These are the most common outsourcing of news to the public is this frame of degeneracy, right? These people are doing this without any logical cause or anything like that. And as we've heard from those that have spoken so far, it's far from that, right? And I just want to offer a small perspective that I've heard from my African-American friends here and from the Black communities that I've sort of been embedded in by being sort of an Indonesian citizen in the United States. And that is, it's not a perspective that is mainstream or commonly heard. And I don't know that many people are, how tangible it is for many people, right? And that is a lot of the properties that are getting damaged, not most of them, but a small minority of the properties that are getting damaged right now are essentially government or city buildings, right? And I think from thinking through this a little bit, that is one tactic used by people that are thinking about what they can do to contribute to defunding law enforcement and police if they don't have any economic or monetary means to do so, right? So if you think about this a little bit, in all the cities around the world, all the major metropolitan cities, Philadelphia, Denver, Los Angeles, New York, these kinds of places, the imagery and the symbolism around this have things to do with the geography and the architecture of a place, right? And that is really important to the worldview of these places. And so for some people that understand that, they sort of destroy these properties in attempts to reallocate funds from law enforcement to the city trying to essentially replenish or repatriate these buildings or make these buildings pristine again, right? So I don't know if that's a tactic that will work, but I know that there's a lot of people that have been talking about these things, and I'm curious to know if anyone else has heard that, because these are largely anecdotal or just conversations I've had with other people, and I don't know how grounded in facts that actually is, right? So that's just something that I'm curious about.
I guess I'll let somebody else respond to Putu, but just to add to what I was saying earlier, one of the things that I thought about, was it Chris? Curtis, when Curtis was speaking earlier, is, you know, when people look at the rioting, the protesting, you know, the looting, it's kind of, you're looking at the symptoms rather than the problem, you know, the root cause. And I think what's one of the things that, an analogy I gave to some friends was, you know, we got COVID-19 going on, and you basically see somebody coughing without covering their mouth, and everybody gets upset about, hey, why is this person coughing when they're not covering their mouth? And that becomes a whole that everybody should cover their mouths when they're coughing, and you forget about trying to solve the fact that there's a virus out that's actually killing people. You don't focus on trying to treat that or try to find a cure for that. Everybody just starts talking about, hey, cover your mouth when you cough because you don't want to spread this virus. So I think that's one way to kind of look at the rioting and protesting, as far as like not changing the narrative from what the root cause is, what's really the true issue.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me add a little bit to that too as well. I mean, this has been a compounded issue on top of issues on top of issues. I mean, we have, first and foremost, we had a lot of people that were out of work because of COVID. Most of the people that were out of work were volunteering to either stay home because they had the opportunity and they could. Some others didn't have a choice. They were either furloughed from their jobs or they were laid off. In that respect, the government's response in trying to help the nation was to send out $1,200. In return, they sent billions of dollars to companies. So if there was any looting that was going on, it was definitely by our U.S. government in that respect. There was really no help or no care in respects to having to get more testing, to get any aid or any other help to the communities that were in dire need. So this situation just kind of snowballed into what it became in today. And the focus is still on the fact that our nation can still turn around and do something to help the people, but still chooses to bail out wealthy companies. This is going to continue to happen, and this is the reason why we have such discrepancies within the communities. And it's going to continue to happen until we decide that we cannot appropriate this way. We need to make sure that in the needs, in people's time of need, that they are addressed as they see fit. And to put people in the situation that we're in now with the COVID, you know, now with the rioting, the looting, everything that's going on, it's eventually all going to come crumbling down. With that said, I actually wanted to talk about the frustrations with what I'm seeing and what's going on, and getting to probably the real sensitive issue that people have with regards to the hashtag of Black Lives Matter, and the need to feel like not just Black Lives Matter, but all lives matter. And it's not about all lives not mattering. It's about Black lives mattering at the moment. So with that being said, I get frustrated over this one thing that I hear. And especially when it comes to the arrest or incarceration of a Black male or Black woman. To give you a little bit of background for me, I'm a 48-year-old Black man. I am from the South Bronx. I grew up in the projects. I left New York City in 94, 95 to come to Temple University. And after my studies here, I decided to stay. So I grew up in what you would call the ghetto. I grew up in a very deprived neighborhood in a building that was jam-packed with a lot of people that were that basically didn't have a pot to piss in. And we were constantly surrounded by law enforcement to make sure that we were held in check. There would be many a times where I would just simply be going to the grocery store to pick up groceries for my mom, and I get caught up in a roundup. And this is basically where, you know, they take everyone in the neighborhood who is suspected of maybe dealing drugs, and regardless of who you are or where you are at any given time, you would get part of that roundup. And the cops would just grab everybody and anybody who's in the area. Now, I can tell you at that time when those things started, for me, it started around 11. You know, it didn't end at all, but I probably was rounded up probably about a good 6 or 7 times where I was thrown in a paddy wagon with straps or even handcuffs and just left to sit there until you verified who you were. And that just became a way of life for me. You know, as I got older, it just became knowing where to be and how to act and where not to go, and how to conduct yourself. You start to educate yourself in terms of who you are as a person and where you fit in society. And what I learned early in life was that society didn't like me. I was not welcomed. And I'm not saying this against everyone, but there was this fear that I had when I was younger and growing up and being in certain neighborhoods, such as like if you lived in New York, there was one place that I knew never to go, which was like Howard Beach, and you know, you knew to stay away from that area. And these were the things that you just got to learn because of the color of your skin, you knew where not to go. So I'm going to fast forward a little bit more. And when I was younger, I grew up with this fear of hoping that not only someone of my own race would take my life, but yet someone who was not of my own race, meaning white, would take my life. And then I had to deal with the law enforcement. You know, there are times where I found myself being extremely scared whenever a cop would want to question me or to pull me over, or if there was any situation where I could be under arrest. As I got older, that fear just turned into concern. So I'm not scared of the cops these days, but I am aware of the fact that they have this power or this force over me, and that any wrong movement, anything that I say, anything that I do can come off as a threat. And it really depends on the cop. And it's a shame that I actually have to be conscientious for the cop instead of the cop being conscientious for me. That's the part that kind of bothers me. And that's the thing that I don't think people understand.
Yep.
And when I get to the point of where this is the one comment that I hear, especially when you see these arrests and you see the videos of what happens. The one thing that I hear people say, and I'm gonna stop talking after this, and we can have the discussion based on this one statement is, well, what did they do for that to happen to them? That's the one thing that frustrates me beyond reasonable doubt, is that why did you think we had to do something in order to be treated the way that we did?
Yep.
So I'm gonna let everyone speak on that.
Yeah. Something to think about that Ian just brought up to me is that for us with Malaysian kids, actually, we have to have that conversation with them on how to act when you go out there, because you're hanging out with your white friends, but you better check yourself, because you shouldn't be acting up like them, because you're going to be the one who probably going to die or get on the ground. So think about that. Think about us in the other Indonesians who are not married to, you know, like a Black person. Do you have to have that conversation with your kids? Think about that. I have to have that conversation with my kid. My kid pissed in his pants, you know, when he first got pulled over by a cop, because, you know, he was scared, you know. So think about that. Something you think about as we're speaking through this.
So I would like to add, because there's so many questions on the Facebook group that I manage, that they keep saying that, oh, you know, we went through riot before, and that's not right. You know, if you remember May 1998, we had a big riot, and it wasn't just riot, it was kind of a little bit genocide against the Chinese Indonesian.
Yeah, Indonesian. Yeah.
So it's a little bit mixed feeling for a lot of Indonesian, because they came to America to escape that riot, to escape that racism and discriminations against them, and they come over here and they see this riot again all over. So they have this view that feels like it's a mixed feeling, that they do understand the cause, but they also wants to feel bad for the looting and for the business that was lost. But my opinion, I keep explaining to them that, you know, I understand your feeling, but again, this is coming. This is natural thing that will come when the government, for a long, long time, ignored and bullied a person, ignored and bullied one group of their citizens, which is the blacks, the African Americans. So not only that, we did all the peaceful protests and everything, with our fists up, with kneeling, with Black Panthers and everything else, but nothing works. Not only that, when Colin Kaepernick kneeled, he wasn't just silenced. He was being bullied. He was being dehumanized, and people threatened his life, threatened the movements, threatened everybody that is into the movement. So this is happening, and then after all of that, it kept happening and kept happening. So I want people that are thinking about making connection to 1998. Think about this. This is happening over and over and over again for decades, for centuries. And the government has not changed. Maybe changed a little bit, but very little. So when you're being ignored and then you're being pushed over and over again, the reaction of anger is gonna be erupted like a volcano. And I feel like they need to stop thinking about the loss of the business and start thinking more of the loss of the Black man and woman that had to lose their life for every single little thing, like a traffic violations, or simply just walking, or simply just playing with the toy gun. And like what Sinta said, I had to talk to my daughter the other night about that. She, even though she is passing white because she's light, but the thing is, no matter what, as soon as they know who's the parent is, they will look at her as Black. And that is the truth. And my second daughter is dark. So I have to have that, conversations. I have to tell my daughter that, honey, when you grow up, no matter how good you are, there are people that will judge you by the race. There will people judge you by your body, how your body looks, how your race look, how your eye looks. So I had to talk to my daughter about that, and I want people of Indonesia, like Indonesian people who who married to whites, who married to fellow Asians, to think and let that sink in. Why is it important for us, like me and Mbak Sinta, to talk like that to our children? And it's not for you. It's all because of this movement that people are angry. We are tired, man. Like, come on, like we're so tired that why do we have to act elegant? Why do we have to raise above all the time when it comes to racial discriminations? What can you understand us? You know what I mean? What can you try to listen instead of just talk and compare things to the other? Just listen, because this is tired. This is tiring, and this is scary. It's not only hurting, it's traumatizing. Even though we're not directly affected by it, we are being traumatized by this. Yeah. So I hope that people that thinks that the looting is not acceptable. Yeah, nobody wants to support the looting. Nobody wants to support the violence. But again, this is the natural things that will happen when, for decades, for years, for centuries, that the government ignored us, that we speak up. Hey, we're hurting. Hey, you are being unfair. It's the same thing went so hard. That's what happened 1998. So I hope that people think better and try to listen better.
Yeah. So I just want to kind of say something about what Mas Jamie said and what Maria said. So it'll be two different things. I'll try to make it as quick as possible. Mas Jamie was saying that he knew he couldn't go to Howard Beach. And I want to put it in a perspective of an Asian girl that grew up, born and raised in Queens. Mas Jamie couldn't go to Howard Beach, but I lived a mile away from Howard Beach and had no fear. So think about that. Yeah. And so when I had mentioned in the beginning where I wanted to see where the other, mostly elder Asians, why not all lives matter, is because we're not seeing it in those views, and we need to see where they're seeing too. So I'll get to that, but Mas Jamie couldn't go to Howard Beach, but I could without fear. And that is one of the things as Asians that we have a privilege of, that we can go into any neighborhood, and yeah, we do get racial slurred at and whatnot, but the fear is not the same. I'm not gonna lie, I used to go to school in the South and I was scared as an Asian person in a white community, in a Black community. Would I have gone to the South Bronx in the early 90s and the late 80s? No, I wouldn't. But that's a different story. For us as Asians, our privilege is so different than the Blacks. And that's why we need to understand why at this point, Black lives matter. And for us to get to all lives matter, we need to get to all Blacks matter. All Black lives matter. And so for the Asians that are questioning, like, why just Black lives matter right now, is because they didn't get the privilege like we did, where we're not scared to get stopped by the cops. Though I almost pissed in my pants, Mas Jamie, once. I only got stopped once because of a lot. Thank you. But look at that. That's the difference. And I think that's what the Asian community need to understand, that our privilege, though, yeah, we're immigrants, and keep that in mind too. If they could do that to people that they brought here, imagine the immigrants that they don't want. Think about it. And so yeah, Asians, please think about like what the Blacks are feeling right now in order to understand why Black lives matter at this time. But also to touch base on like what Maria said, and she kind of touched on the 1998 1998 riot, and also to understand why Asians and Indonesians specifically are, you know, kind of not closed-minded, but are afraid of the riots, is because 1998, the Chinese literally were like Maria said, like it was genocide. And my family, I have 8 uncles and aunties, and half of them are business owners, and their businesses were ransacked. You know, my cousin is afraid of the dark. Well, when he was younger, but he was afraid of the dark because he had to wait in the dark while people were basically ruining their home and their business downstairs. So I understand why the Asian community, specifically Indonesians, are really kind of scared about the rioting. Is because of that, because of 98. And so that's why I want to educate and elevate, just because like we need to understand where everybody is coming from so that we're not constantly battling and arguing. And so when we understand the different views, we see, okay. So when my mother says things like this, because she had this kind of experience. My grandma in the 1940s, we're not saying she's Chinese, but she is from Chinese descent. My grandfather was more of Chinese descent, but even she experienced her brothers like being murdered in front of her, macheted in front of her, because they were quote unquote supposed to be Chinese. So this whole rioting and whatnot, I understand why the Indonesians are, specifically them, are really afraid. It's because of 98 and the history that we have with rioting, where rioting is more against those who are the ones. I don't really know the history of the Chinese there and why people hate the Chinese so much, and I could be wrong, someone please correct me, but that's why people are scared. So just to put that out there too, so everyone knows where everyone's coming from. But the most part, really, I wanted to just comment on what Ms. Jamie said, just the privilege we have as an Asian, like just understand that Asians, like we don't have that same fear.
Yeah, thank you.
You don't have that same fear.
Thanks, Steph. I love how people calling Jamie and Curtis Mas. So Mas Chris, get ready. We're gonna call you Mas. That's very Indonesian way of calling someone who's, you know, like who's older, as a, you know, show respect. We can be like about the same age. So anyways, Bernadette.
Yeah, I can't even call him DJ Lee. Like it's so disrespectful for me. only at the wedding, but I gotta call him Mas.
I appreciate the love. Appreciate it.
Okay. So all I basically want to add to this conversation is, so as the gentleman was speaking, starting at the age of 11, I just want folks to put yourself in the shoes of a young Black boy, a young Black girl. At the age of 11, when you should be enjoying your youth, when you should be playing and just enjoying your youth as a child. So imagine starting, and sometimes it starts even earlier. It starts even earlier before the age of 11. So imagine all of that pinned up in a child, and you come into adolescence and then adulthood. So when you see this here looting and rioting, it's a lot of pent up frustration, anger, hurt, pain, you know, seeing your friends die at the hands of police that's supposed to be protecting us. So you can't imagine waking up, you know, getting your thoughts together as a child, like, what am I to say if I'm stopped? Or when you're walking down the street, you see a police officer car and you just freeze.
Yep.
I mean, the pain, the agony, just as a child, you have to think those thoughts. You know, you have to become an adult before you are even at the age of an adult, as far as your thinking, as far as your reactions. So what you see now, or what you have seen in this here looting and rioting, it's a lot of pinned up stuff. And this is the way they're saying, I'm paying you back. to us. I am mad. I'm frustrated. No one's helping me. No one's helping my people. Every time I turn on the TV, the cops are being, excused, desk duty. But yet, if we do something, the whole book is thrown at us for the least little thing. So, I mean, I am so hopeful and optimistic that we're going to have a turnaround, but besides looking at what they're doing, look at what they have to endure, what's going on in the inside, the stress. So this is like, I need to show out. This is how I am funneling all those feelings on the inside. It's not right. It's not right at all. Every person that I know and speak to know it's wrong. It's absolutely wrong. I even said in a post, think about what you've done, see how we can turn it around. But you're seeing years and years of frustration, pinned up anger, no way of releasing it, because if you release it, then you're labeled as
Yep.
There's no win. There's no win. There's no win.
Yep.
There's no win. There is no win at all. No matter how we react, how we respond, we're dinged every damn time. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Unmute yourself.
Okay, you guys hear me? Because let me stretch real quick because I got a few things, and
Yeah.
I apologize. I talk a lot, but I want to go back to Putu. And Putu, what you're saying is essentially based in something called redlining. And so in the United States, African Americans historically, even though they had access to home ownership, they had interest rates and that were way out of line with what everybody else got. And so what you'd end up doing is you'd have families who were in houses forever, but they were leasing the houses as opposed to owning the houses. And so for generations, you have folks who were, once Big Mama, which is a grandmother, once she died and everybody's like, oh, she owned the house. Come to find out she didn't own the house, and everybody had to move in this house, whereas the white community didn't have these issues and didn't have this problem. Hurricane Katrina is a perfect example of what people thought was natural gentrification. Historically, when you were redlined, you were put in spaces where you could either be flooded, there were fault lines, you were closer, you were the bridge between white communities and natural disasters. And that is like real. That's a legit thing. And so the level of distrust that a community has to have with their government, to the point to where it's like, oh, this is, just an opportunity to rebuild these places and use insurance money, is crazy, but it's not that far from what has happened historically or the truth. Now, I also want to touch on what Jamie said about his feelings. How on earth, as a law-abiding, tax-paying citizen who pays police officers' salary, do they have power over us? I've seen white people interact with police, and they for sure think the police work for them. I have never seen an African American, no matter what their economic level, feel like the police work for them. Now, Black Panther is a movie that we've all known and watched, and it is a great example of what it's like to be an African American. The United States essentially does not want you. If you had a dime for every time an African American heard "go back to Africa," and you say, well, I didn't bring me here. Conversely, Africa doesn't want us, and we don't necessarily have a tie to where we're from. We can pay for genealogy tests, but if I land in Nigeria or Ghana as an African American, don't nobody know me. They have no clue who I am. And so where is home for us and me? When we talk about kids of Blasian families, one of the things I want to share with you guys is a documentary called The Loving Generation. As you may know, in the United States, it was illegal up until maybe the 60s, 70s for African Americans and Caucasians to marry. And so The Loving Generation was a case that, is a white man and a black woman, and it went to the Supreme Court, and it allowed them to marry. And so one of the things is this documentary talks about the children of the loving generation. So please don't just think that's for white and black families. That's for every black family that's mixed. Historically, we had something called the one drop rule. And so if you had one drop black in your community or in your DNA, you were treated as an African American, which means all of your rights as a white individual were stripped away. You're black now, which is, again, one of the things that I think, I believe Tiffany was talking about, and forgive me if it wasn't you, Tiffany. Whereas, and living in Indo, if you were married to a bule, that one drop white meant you were white. And I had kids come up to me, it's like, well, why are you black? And I'm like, well, your parents are mixed. And, you know, you don't think, and they're like, no. I'm like, well, that's a kind of different conversation for a different day. Like, I'm gonna let your parents talk to you about that one. But when Bernadette was talking about, you know, as far as kids and things of that nature, everybody loves to post pictures and see pictures of kids who are mixed or, you know, little black boys or girls and how their joy and everything like that. But to Bernadette's point, when do your kids stop being cute and start becoming a threat? And that's something as a parent, as an African American, you have to take under consideration. I am also 6'2", 6'3". My kid is going to be that size. Did I curse him because of that? Because now he's a threat once he's of age. And so these are just some of the things that I wanted to make sure that I mentioned, and I promise I will shut up. But, you know, definitely check out The Loving Generation for families who are here.
Even if your videos are on, put your hands up like this. Like, let me see all your fingers. Even if I don't see, do it at home. You don't have, you know, like, I want you to be safe. I want you to be comfortable here. All right. Let's do this game. And Curtis and anybody from the Black community, if you want to chime in, you let me know. No, not like that. We're not doing the K-pop thing, okay? All right. Have you ever been afraid of the police whatsoever in your life? So if you have, put one finger down. Have you ever, in any time in your life, be afraid of the police? So even if you're Indonesians, do this too, okay? Have you ever gone to a store and somebody just follow you because of your skin color? Put another finger down if you ever experienced that. Add to that. Add to that. What is the other experience that you feel?
Have you ever been pulled over because you were driving a nice car because of the color of your skin?
Okay. All right. Curtis, I'm going to unmute you. Unmute yourself and add to this. Remember how many fingers you have put down?
Yeah. So I'm putting fingers down before the questions are even finished. because I'm just like, yep. So
that's how real it is.
Yep.
And again, a lot of it's because, folks don't they can't fathom that you could have. Yeah. And if it doesn't make sense to people, then they got to figure out why.
All right, Karina, give me an example. We're continuing. No, I'm saying, have you ever? Give us an have you ever. Bernadette, go ahead if you want to add. So then we can see my 10 fingers still up.
Yeah. Have you ever been walking in a store and a woman has clutched her purse?
Yep. Put a finger down. Have you ever have to talk to your children how to act when they're out in public? Just because of the color of their skin. All right. Bernadette, you want to add?
Okay. Have you ever had a family gathering to discuss the do's and the don'ts? The do's and the don'ts of how you should represent your the last name of your family.
Yeah. Chris and Tiff, Delle, you want to add to have you ever?
Have you ever had to partly end a relationship because of your race?
Have you ever have to end your relationship because of your race? Put a finger down. Okay. Delle, you want to say We want to unmute and like do an have you ever? Think about it. Look at how many fingers you have up and look at how many fingers some of us have up.
Have you ever been called a racial slur by somebody who you or your parents pay their salary? Meaning a teacher, a public service worker, a police officer, any of those.
Yep. Yeah. Anybody else? 3 more? 1 more? We don't have to wait. But think about it. Look at your fingers and look at some of us. That is my friend. Look at my fingers. I still have 9 fingers up. That, my friend, is privilege. This is our privilege. Let's talk about this. Indonesians, chime in. Woo, this is going to be interesting. All right. Here's what my friends have said to me about my husband. I'm going to say it in Indonesian and then I'll say it in English. I'm all pumped about this. Think about it, right? So, my friend would say to me, I'll say it in Indonesian, aduh, suami lo tuh sopan banget ya. Biasanya kalau orang hitam tuh yo gitu. Let me say it in English. Oh, your husband is so articulate and polite because usually black people are like yo like that. Do not say that. Not right. All right, chime in.
I am, but still.
Me. I got so many.
All right, go ahead, Tiffany.
Oh, cowok lu, how do you say handsome?
Apa?
Ganteng sekali ya for orang hitam, and I'm like,
say it in English.
I think I didn't have English, but your man is really handsome, huh, for a black guy.
Check them. All right, let's go. Who else? Who else?
I got 2. I got 2.
Do it.
So first was Oma, which is the grandmothers. The Oma Indonesia ngeliatin anak pertama, karena anak pertama kan putih, bahasa, oh anaknya cantik ya, pasti bule deh suaminya. Enggak, orang hitam. Loh kok bisa putih? So in English, so the grandmothers, like, you know, all the elders Indonesian elders was looking at my kid, the first child, and she's white. She looks white, and then they're saying like, oh my goodness, she's so beautiful and so pretty. Oh, your husband must be white. I'm like, no, my husband is black. Oh, how? And the other one is when I gave birth to my second one is dark. So and then everybody was saying, oh my goodness, it's okay, she's dark, she's gonna be beautiful very soon, she's gonna change colors. Usually they're gonna change colors, so she's gonna be lighter, she's gonna be beautiful. I'm like, she's already beautiful, what are you talking about?
Yeah. Thank you. Natalie, you want me to just read it or you want to speak up?
Oh, I have a boyfriend and he's not, okay, so he's actually Singaporean and his race is Indian mixed Malaysian. And I've got a lot of comments from my friends these past years we've been dating. Can I say it in Bahasa? I think it's better if I
say it in Bahasa and then explain it. So then, you know, for those of us who don't speak Bahasa.
So in my environment, right? Jadi teman-teman aku itu emang majority of them are actually Chinese Indonesian because of the school that I've been attending, and my parents are, you can say, very conservative. Pemikirannya sangat traditional, you know. And setiap kali mereka ask about my boyfriend, mereka selalu nanya kayak, oh cowok lu hitam ya, your boyfriend is dark skin, black gitu. Then I say, yeah, he's dark skin, what's the problem? They will just say, oh, why is he so talkative? Like, why does he have so much things to say? And I know what they meant by that. Kayak, my boyfriend in particular, he's like very, he likes to express things very, how do I say this? He likes to express things to people. And it's not really a thing, I guess, in our culture to express things gitu. And what else do I get? Just things that are very offensive, and I would tell my boyfriend about that, and he would just say, just ignore it, you know, like they will never understand, like it's fine.
Yeah, yeah, totally agree. Anybody else want to chime in?
Can I say something?
Yes, please.
Oh, all right, Natalie, don't worry about your parent. You grow up as you are. You accept your boyfriend. You marry, maybe you marry your boyfriend, so you not marry your parents. All right, so this is your life. Okay, so if anybody know about me, I used to marry with a white guy. Okay, but married is boom. And then right now I have a black boyfriend. Okay, so this is very typical Indonesian people that say, when I was married with a white dude, even my mom's friend that I don't know them came to the house visiting us and then say, whoa, your daughter have a bully. You know, we white people, we call it bully. Yeah, bully. How did she find him? You know, tell her to find my daughter. You know, I want my daughter to date a white dude also. Like, duh, you know, why you ask me? Ask your daughter to go out to find one, you know? So that's like, and then it's two of them, and it's irked the hell out of me. You know, like, yo. So right now, I divorced with him, and I have black boyfriend. And I invited him to come over here, but his dog have to go. He has to go to vet for his dog, so he can't be here. So, and then somebody say, "Wow, you know, out of race, you choose black." And huh? What's up with that? What's up with black people? You know, it doesn't matter for me. It doesn't matter what kind of race that you are. Any race, some of you got the jerk side, you know. So a lot of black folks that is very, you know, very knowledge, very, you know, very sayang. You mean cinta? You know, Curtis know about that, right, Curtis? So okay, and you know, so like stop. You know, Indonesian community, please, you know, educate your people. You know, I had to argue with my older brother that he lived in Indonesia because my father pointed out a video about the black a black guy that being stopped, pulled over by the cop, and then from that video I said the black guy doesn't do anything wrong, but still, you know, but end up the black guy shooting the back to the cop. And I had to argue with him, you know, no, it doesn't mean if he carry a gun, at first he didn't carry the gun, but, you know, according to him, you shooting the cop is wrong. No, it's not that, you know, if it doesn't mean that you carry a gun sometime, you know, like, you know, this is the Indonesian thing. They don't know how black folks live, how they treat it in America. So for me, shut up. You don't have right to say which one is good, which one is bad. No, it's not the point. So, and I had to share something, you know, the obstacle that black folks, you know, face in this country to him and everything. So finally he shut up.
Yep.
So that's it.
Yep. Thank you, Ian. Thank you. Remember that we are allies. A lot of us who are not black, we are allies and do what allies would do. There is a question about what is, we'll talk about this later. Mas Putu, I'll give you a second. Grace, go ahead. You wanted to share something. This is my daughter.
So, like, it was like either like a year or two ago, I was in class, and so some Asian students were like, oh, like there's a lot of Asians in this class, like let's gather them for like a picture or something. Since my school is predominantly white, I guess they just, I don't know, for whatever reason. So there was full Asians, there was Wasians there, So they were gathering like the Asians in the class for whatever reason. I guess they wanted to take a picture or something. So I just saw them like gathering people up. And so no one like included me. And people there know I'm Asian. Like they know I'm half Asian. Like there's an Indonesian, like Andrew, he was there. He knows I'm half Asian. I don't know if everyone else does, but they didn't include me in it. So I was just telling my friend like, oh, like I guess I don't count or something. And they heard me and they're like, oh, like I didn't think you counted. But like there's Asians there who are also half Asian. So because I'm half, why would I not?
Explain what Asian is. We don't know.
Asian is white and Asian, for those of you who don't know.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't know why I shouldn't count, because just because I'm darker or don't look as Asian does not make me any less Asian.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm gonna go to Delle and I'm gonna go to Putu.
Well, first of all, Grace, I'm so sorry that happened to you. That is beyond messed up. If I were there, I'd be the first ones to stand up to them and be like, yo, you guys need to be checked right now. So
You're lucky I'm not there.
Mine would be very similar to what others have said. You know, oh, you know, Shola's great because, you know, he's this, it's different from blah, 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 you know, and it's basically, you almost have to prove that, or at least they see it as like, he is the exception. Like, yeah, he's a qualifier. And, it's, you know, and having, you know, been raised in Indonesia, it's very different if you say date a white person. The assumption is, the default is, that's great, you hit the jackpot until proven otherwise. But if it's with a black person, you know, oh wow, like that sucks for you unless you prove that he's X, Y, and Z, you know, and it's this mindset that you almost have to prove that he's superior in his qualities in order for you to sort of exclude them from this negative stereotype. But another thing, and I guess maybe Shola wanted to share too, that there is this other nuance in terms of discrimination, where one other stereotype that I've heard as well is like, oh, but you know, Shola is Nigerian American, that's different, you know, like, you know, these Nigerian immigrants or these African immigrants, they're different, you know. And so I know that that's another stereotype that's absolutely terrible, that I know is something that there's a lot of tension in that too, based on very inaccurate stereotypes that a lot of people's kind of you know, perpetuate as well. But that's another thing that I get frustrated by too, is if, you know, trying to make assumptions based on that.
Yeah. I'll just be brief. So again, like I'm in a little bit of a unique situation because like I'm not just black, but I'm immigrant, and I guess so I kind of see that I kind of have an understanding of how immigrants could view Black Americans, but I also have an understanding of how because I grew up as a Black American, though, you know, I was born in Nigeria, but I came here when I was 6 months old. My father, however, came here in his 20s. But so I basically grew up with more so with both the immigrant experience and the Black American experience. And one thing I've had a number of people who aren't Black who try to kind of almost like a divisive argument saying, well, African immigrants are different than African Americans. And one of the things that I really harp on is like, look, like my father had some struggles to get to this country, to get to where he was. But growing up in Nigeria, for the first 20 years of my father's life, or 18 years of my father's life, he did not have to worry about somebody discriminating against him because of the color of his skin. He had other things he had to overcome to get to this country, but for the first 18 to 20 years, first 2 decades of his life, the color of his skin was not something that held him back.
As well as the generations before him.
As far as, again, as well as generations before him. And I'm not trying to go into all that. That's a whole different discussion. But that's something I realized that my father benefited from. And I did not necessarily inherit all that benefit or that privilege, but I inherited some of it by not having the generations before him have to deal with that before I came here and really started to face some of the African American struggle growing up.
Thank you. All right, I'm just going to read about colorism and anti-Blackness just within our community. Okay, I just want to read this. All these comments or sort of like an attitude. Warning against staying out in the sun too long. Oh, nanti jadi hitam. Oh, you're gonna be darker. You know, don't be out in the sun too long. Commenting on skin shade as a greeting. Hello, hitam, right? If you translate it in English, hello, hello, black. You know, that is not okay. Whitening products everywhere and given as gifts. Okay. Equating black skin with disease and misfortune. This is so I got a lot of this also privately. A lot of them don't want to be here just to avoid confrontation with family. One of the comment was, orang hitam kan biasanya nggak sukses gitu, right? Like a black person usually unsuccessful. Why do you say that? Indonesians? Congratulating someone for marrying light skin. Yeah. My own experience. Oh, your husband's not as dark. He's cute. So this is he's actually my second husband. So my first husband was darker, Grace's dad. So they're like, oh, look at that. Yeah, this one I like. He's lighter skin. That's not okay. Yeah, congratulations someone for marrying light-skinned person, envying someone for marrying a white person. What Ian just said. Let me see. Making sure the baby is light before checking if they're healthy. Thankful for the white mix. We hear this a lot. This is colorism and anti-Blackness. So Putu, go ahead if you need to say something.
Sure, thank you. There's so many good things that everyone has said and so many poignant things that need to be addressed, but my response here is toward Tiffany and Delle in particular. I thank you for calling out the Indonesian and larger Asian American community for these sort of comments and these deep-seated, embodied, ostensible racisms, right? And I think Delle, your inquiry on your family and generations and immigrants are at the crux of these conversations about Blackness in America and also Blackness in the communities surrounding Indonesian people, right? And one thing that not a lot of people tend to talk about in terms of solidarity and people of color, right, is that sometimes we get all lumped into being all people of color when we all have different histories. And as Tiffany was saying, as an Indonesian, we have, or even just Asian American, we have different histories and different contextual identities, right? For example, as Curtis was saying earlier, slavery began, sort of global slavery, but specific to America in 1619, right? That is a part of history that has to do with forced migration specifically. Indonesians came to the US by no force at all. It was immigration by opportunity, and there wasn't the same kind of contextual histories that Black Americans or African Americans have had in this country, right? So just talking about that is one that's difficult for Indonesian communities to grasp in culturally and in their mind, right? Primarily also because a lot of Indonesians in the United States, our spaces, for the vast majority of Indonesians in the United States, our spaces are white spaces. We've come here through white channels. We've come here, and quite frankly, us here are sort of a minority in our experiences with Black America and African American America, right? Whereas a lot of older generation Indonesian people, their interactions and how they learned about the United States have been through the voices of larger white voices and white infrastructure. And that's what's difficult, right? And I think and I want to preface this with, I don't want to justify, this isn't justification for our other Indonesian compatriots in justifying their racism, but it is sometimes difficult to put on these Western frames of thinking to Indonesian life, right? Where I forgot who was speaking earlier, I think here's Natalie, but back in Indonesia, this is how people think here, and this is our interactions. That's not necessarily going to translate in the US, right? So what I'm trying to say here is I think we do need to address these things, but very strategically and tactically, right? Because I know for a lot of you, you're still, even with the problems in your families, you still love them, I hope, right? That you still want to maintain connections with them. And sometimes it's just different generations of thinking that, of course, we can't just bypass that. We have to move forward and be able to be empathetic and sympathetic in different ways. But you can't just go up to someone that's lived this long this way and say, that's wrong, what you're saying is wrong. You have to sort of say, okay, I hear what you're saying, but, and understand that these were your histories, but it's not the right way to necessarily talk about it today, right? So I totally get the anger and the frustration, and I'm totally part of it too. Unfortunately, I'm all for the violence right now. As much as I want to be peaceful, I understand the violence, but at the same time, try and take a breath, especially as Asian Americans. We're good at taking breaths, and we've had to, and let, of course, the African American community's voices speak for themselves, right? And I understand the irony here as I'm talking too much, but I'll stop now.
Thank you, Putu. I think everybody agrees. I certainly have experienced it myself with close friends and some family members, right? That if we're going to fight fire with fire, then maybe it will never stop. So I would say to my fellow Indonesians that we need to educate them, but there are ways to educate them. Remember, we're also Indonesian, so think about that. There are values that we have to remember. Instead of really like yelling at them, that's not the point. And then especially don't educate someone on WhatsApp or social media. It's better to have a heart-to-heart conversation, because nobody can read your posts. People will read your post when they're angry, and they're going to interpret that you're angry. Think about that. Don't fight with your friends. So, like, take the time, take a breather, like Putu said. It's so true. I myself is this person who's like rah, rah, rah. But I have to remember, like, you know what? Maybe this person is not saying that. Maybe this is how I'm interpreting it. Jadi di antara orang Indonesia nggak usah berantem. Kalau mau educate, but call them up or have a face-to-face conversation. That's even better, because the people who know you know who you are. They know how that you meant well, and if you know your friend well, you know they meant well too, right? Jadi bisa diselesaikan dengan cara Indonesia. Tidak berarti you have to be silent, but educate them. And I'm not even saying that you have to be sopan atau gimana. It's not even that, but understand the other person too, because especially mungkin orang-orang tua kita. Let me speak in English. Some Asian Americans have asked questions like, how do I talk to my parents? Whew, that's going to be a tough conversation, because they have been living in Indonesia so long, and they're moving here. Their experience is different. So be patient. Is a marathon. It's not a sprint, right? It's a marathon. For us, it's day in and day out. For us, because we're protesting doesn't mean we just did this last week, guys. We've been doing this, right? So let me just
Can I say something?
Yeah, sure. And then we want to wrap it up. So
I specifically want to speak to the young people. So if anyone plays this back and they're listening,
you have 2 minutes.
I want to thank you for actually taking up our fight. I mean, we're frustrated, we're angry. What we have done hasn't been working. And the younger people have found a different way to communicate. They've crossed barriers, they've crossed lines, they have friends with people in far reaches that I never would have had when I was younger. So I thank every young person who has taken up our fight and breaking down all barriers and speaking up for the same movement, for the Black Lives Movement. So thank you to all the young people that are picking up the mantle and doing everything they can to change this world to make it better for themselves. Because our time has come and gone, but their time is now. And I'm so grateful to them. So thank you for standing up and fighting with us.
Yeah. Thank you, Jamie. Just
thank you for giving us this platform.
No, thank you to you all.
Thank you to the Storm.
And shout out to those who are watching who cannot be here for whatever reason. I know you all really are angry and frustrated, but know that we're going to continue this dialogue. So I just want to read this about what is racial gaslighting, right? So since we are educating, so I'm going to read it in Indonesian. Rasisme belum hilang, mohon punya empati. Belum cukup kalau bilang saya nggak rasis, mari kita semua menjadi anti rasis. So what is racial gaslighting? Comments like, I'll read it in English for and then I'll read it in Indonesian, because sometimes for Indonesians, it hits the spot more when you speak in Indonesian, right? So racial gaslighting sounds like if you protested, said it peacefully, more people would listen to you. Okay, that's one. What I said or did is not racist. So these are comments about racial gaslighting. Racism doesn't exist anymore. It was just a joke, calm down. Such and such people are racist too. Why is it always about race? Are you sure that's what happened? Just to play devil's advocate here, ... In my opinion, I don't think that they were being racist. I think ... So let me read it in Indonesian. Kalau protesnya peaceful, nanti didengerin. Ini bukan cara yang benar. Indonesia nggak ada yang rasis, itu masalah Amerika Serikat. Memang gue rasis. Ini bukan rasis kok, ngomong doang. Rasisme udah nggak ada. Emang siapa sih yang masih rasis zaman sekarang? Okay. We love everybody, bro. Orang gue bercanda doang, sensitif banget sih lo. Serius banget, males gue. We hear this a lot. Kenapa sih semua harus tentang ras terus? Itu lagi. Capek dengerin, tahu nggak sih? Sambil scrolling TikTok. Yakin lo? Beneran nggak sih? Masa iya sih? Gitu. Tar, dengerin dulu. Misalnya, ... Itu bukan rasis tahu, bagi gue nih, ... Okay. So, when we say comments like that, we are not listening to each other. Kalau kita mulai comment seperti itu, kita nggak dengerin. But at the same time, me, if someone say to me that I should listen, then I should listen, right? I would listen, but let's have a real conversation. Let's not suddenly telling me, well, stop with this negativity and education. Well, then you don't want me to say anything, you know? Now I lose my train of thoughts. What else? Did you want to say something? Okay. Did anybody want to say anything else? What I want is for us to continuing educating and elevating. Again, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Don't stop this conversation just because tomorrow suddenly everybody's going to normal and then we can eat at restaurants again, right? Yes. Oh, Lutfi, go ahead.
Yeah.
Do you want to turn on your video or no?
No, it's okay. I just want to add you here. Buat teman-teman kita yang di Indonesia, stop using the N-word when you want to explain. So educate yourself about the Black community and the Black history in the US. Okay, so, and be careful when you talk to your friends, your family, whether in Indonesia or in this country. Cuman itu aja.
Yeah, thank you, Lutfi. So if you're Indonesian, can you use the N-word even if you're reciting a rap song? Anybody want to answer?
No.
No, you cannot. So you cannot even use that with your bros. I don't think you should. You know, sometimes you're cool like that, right? But, you know, just think about it, because, you know, people use it. Right now you're cool with your bros. The minute you're mad at each other and you use that word, what's going to happen, right? Anybody want to add any more thoughts?
As you know, I'm a Indonesian Chinese. So, and as if, like Ian knows my mom, we are different generations. The way that I try to talk to her about this movement, is try to get her empathize by telling her about the racism that they experience in Indonesia, that telling them that it is not okay for them, and then show them the video that what happened to the Black people is similar to, is much worse that we experience in Indonesia. And that's how I tried to make them empathize, try to make them understand what's going on here, instead of looking at it from the loot and the rioting. Because as we know, as Indonesian Chinese, it's a complex matter. Because of the 1998, when we see the loot and the rioting, what we see is the experience that we have as Indonesian Chinese being the target of that racism. Especially when you see those stores being Black owned, it's similar to what we have in Indonesia when the stores starting putting this sign press milik pribumi. Those kind of stuff is triggering for us. I know it's hard to talk to make them understand, but that's the way I try to make them understand. Instead of trying not to say, trying to make them understand that the loot or rioting is bad, I try to make them empathize with the racism experience the Blacks have with what they have experienced in Indonesia, because it's much easier that way, instead of trying to explain why the loot and riot happens here.
Robert, that's a great point, and I'm glad that you made that. And drawing parallels in a different situation to help someone understand another situation somewhere else is probably the best thing that you can do. But let me add to that. For Black people, even though that persecution is being done, we can't go anywhere. This is it. We cannot go anywhere. This is our home. And we're trying our best to make a life here. And most people want to come here to make a better life for themselves. Yet in our own home, we can barely make a life for ourselves. So that's a good point that you made. Draw the parallel, and here in the situation where you can leave one situation to go somewhere where it's better.
Yeah. Okay. I'm only going to take 3 more and let's wrap it up, because I know some of you are going to the protest. And then, you know, I don't want to take up too much of your Saturday. So I'm going to let Maria speak, Grace speak, and then we're going to close with Chris.
I would like to add that your associations to Black family and Black friends do not excuse you or justify you that you are not racist. Just because you have Black family and Black friends, it doesn't mean that what you said about racism, that little bit cringy, are not racist, are not ignorant, are not prejudiced. If you say something prejudiced, if you say something racist, do not say, oh, I'm not racist because I have Black family. Oh, I'm not racist because I have Black friends. Please don't say that. Please, Indonesian, do not say that. If you say something racist, you are racist. I don't care if you have Black friends or Black family. You are racist. Thank you.
Yeah. Grace, go ahead.
I just want to say that you shouldn't care about these topics just because it's viral right now.
Hold on. Sorry, Grace. I have to spotlight you. Okay.
All right. So yeah, you shouldn't care about these topics just because it's viral right now. And I just want to make sure that everyone remembers that when this conversation isn't being talked about as much, and if you want to be in solidarity with the Black community and be an ally, you have to remember that to stand up to microaggressions, casual racism, just things you see every day, and not just like, it doesn't mean just posting on social media. Like, you have to commit if you really like claim to be a ally to the Black community.
So stand up.
Stand up. That's right. All right, let's go to Chris. Thank you, Grace.
So I'm half Black, half Puerto Rican. When I got into the fire academy, they pulled me to the side and said I have to choose one, Black or Hispanic, just because they want to get their numbers up. They want more minorities on the job. When I got to my firehouse, I was the second person of color in the firehouse. I work in Harlem. That's like the most diverse place in New York City. I was the second Black person there. It's crazy that when I go on calls, I see kids like come up to me. little black boys say, "Mommy, there's a black fireman," and like hearing that, seeing that, like that gives perspective to like just our current society. Like that they have to say that and realize that when they see me, and that gives me a good feeling. Like whenever so I always go to like schools nearby. I love speaking to kids because like you gotta show them that even if you see a world dominated by one color, you could enter that world and you could build from that world and prosper in that world. And like I have friends, I have black friends, white friends, and I hang out with them. But I also check them. If they say something incorrect, you gotta let them know. Don't be afraid just because they're your friend. If they're your friend, they're not gonna stop talking to you because you check them.
Right.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm also from the same family as you, black and Puerto Rican. So I understand. And I've actually adopted more just being black because I don't speak Spanish. But
same here.
But I mean, usually the world makes you choose.
Yeah. I think that's it, guys. We've wrapped up. If anybody else want to say anything, this is, you guys been real. Totally appreciate this. You all been awesome. Love you all. Love you all. Be safe out there. Oh, I can't do that.